Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to explore this fascinating connection between male fertility, mental health, and sexual function.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. We're taking a close look at this recent article from Nature Reviews Urology. It's called The Interplay Between Male Fertility, Mental Health, and Sexual Function.
I've heard some buzz about this one.
Yeah, it's generating a lot of discussion, and it's by Vincent J. Straub and Melinda C. Mills. It was published online last August.
Oh, very recent then.
Yeah, and it feels particularly timely with all the concern around declining birth rates globally.
Absolutely. That's a hot topic right now.
Exactly. So we're going to unpack some of the insights from this article, and I think you'll find some of them pretty surprising. Ready to dive in?
Definitely. Let's go.
Okay, so one of the things that really struck me about this research is how it kind of reframes how we think about male infertility.
How's
Well, we often focus on treating male infertility as kind of an isolated problem, right? But this research suggests that we need to start viewing it as a potential indicator of a man's overall health.
Oh, that's interesting. So like a warning sign that something else might be going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like male infertility could be a canary in the coal mine, even if we don't fully understand the exact cause. The authors highlight that male infertility is a factor in about half of all infertility cases.
Wow, that's a significant number.
Right. It really underscores the potential scale of this issue. And it challenges this assumption that declining birth rates are solely due to social factors or women's choices.
Yeah, it really broadens the scope of the conversation.
Exactly. The article emphasizes that men's reproductive health and behavior play a crucial role, and that's something that hasn't been given enough attention in this whole debate about declining birth rates.
I see what you mean. It definitely adds a new dimension to the discussion.
It does. So let's talk about this connection between lifestyle, mental health, and fertility. The article highlights a study from Finland and Sweden, and it found a link between rising male childlessness and mood disorders, especially depression.
Okay, so there's a correlation between mental health and fertility.
Yeah, and it gets even more complex when you factor in things like alcoholism, diabetes, and obesity. The study found a correlation there too.
So these lifestyle factors also seem to be playing a role.
Absolutely. And the researchers proposed this potential pathway where poor mental health might actually lead to these lifestyle risk factors, ultimately impacting fertility.
That makes sense. Someone struggling with depression might be more likely to turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like excessive drinking or a poor diet, which could then affect their reproductive health.
Exactly. It's not just about one isolated factor, but this complex web of interconnected influences. The researchers even proposed that mental health assessments in early adulthood could potentially predict future reproductive health.
That's an interesting idea. So like intervening early on could make a big difference.
That's the thinking. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the relationship between sexual function and mental well-being. It's not a one-way street, right?
Definitely not. We know there's a strong connection between mood disorders, chronic stress, substance use, and sexual dysfunction.
Right. And animal studies have even shown how stress can directly impact testicular function and sperm parameters through hormonal pathways. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it really highlights how interconnected our mental and physical health really are.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, the article points out that conditions like erectile dysfunction can actually lead to anxiety and depression, creating this kind of vicious cycle.
Oh, I can see how that would happen. It can really impact a man's self-esteem and his relationships.
Absolutely. And speaking of relationships, the article also touches on how traditional masculinity ideologies might be playing a role in all of this.
That's an interesting angle. How so?
Well, they suggest that these societal expectations around male sexuality might actually be working against men's mental and sexual health.
I see what you mean. There's so much pressure on men to conform to certain ideals of sexual prowess, and that can definitely lead to anxiety and unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Exactly. It's like society is setting men up for failure in a way.
It's a really important point to consider.
It is. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's one more critical aspect we need to discuss. Paternal age.
Ah, yes. Delayed fatherhood is becoming more and more common.
It is. And the research suggests that as men age, there are not only declines in testosterone, sexual function, and fertility, but also potential adverse effects on the mental health of their offspring.
Wait, really? The father's age can impact the mental health of his children?
That's what the research indicates. It's pretty significant, right?
Yeah, that's a big deal. What kind of effects are we talking about?
Well, studies suggest a potential increased susceptibility to conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and addiction in the children of older fathers.
Wow, that's pretty heavy stuff. What could be causing this connection?
The research points to several potential biological mechanisms, including oxidative stress, telomere shortening, chromosome errors, and something called de novo mutations.
Okay, I'm not familiar with all of those. Can you break them down a bit?
Sure. So, telomeres, for example, are like these protective caps on the ends of chromosomes. Think of them like those plastic tips on your shoelaces. They help protect our DNA.
Okay, I get the analogy.
But they get shorter over time. And as men age, these caps get shorter, leaving their DNA more vulnerable.
I see. And lifestyle choices might play a role too.
Exactly. It seems like it's a combination of biological aging and lifestyle factors that contribute to these potential risks.
That makes sense. So, are there any ways to mitigate these risks?
The research suggests some strategies like lifestyle modifications, antioxidant supplementation, and even sperm freezing.
Interesting. So, it's not just about a man's immediate health, but also the potential long-term impact on his children and even future generations.
Precisely. It's a
Good.
lot to think about, right?
It is. This research really opens up a whole new perspective on male reproductive health.
I agree. It goes way beyond just fertility. It's about overall health and well-being, with implications that extend far beyond the individual.
That's a powerful message. It really underscores the need for us to rethink how we approach male reproductive health. It's not just about treating infertility in isolation, but recognizing it as like a vital sign of a man's overall health and well-being.
I see what you mean. It's about connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What needs to change to address these interconnected issues?
Well, the authors of this article, they call for a multifaceted approach. They argue that reproductive health should be explicitly recognized as a critical men's health issue within like national health strategies. It should be integrated into national health policies.
Okay, so they're advocating for kind of breaking down the silos between different areas of healthcare and taking a more holistic approach. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of incorporating mental health into these strategies.
Mm.
It's not just about the biomedical model, but recognizing the interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors in men's health.
So it's not just like adding a pamphlet about mental health to a doctor's visit. You're talking about a fundamental shift in how we view and support men's health, even from a policy perspective.
Exactly. It's about creating a system that acknowledges the complexities of men's lives and provides comprehensive support that addresses their mental, physical, and reproductive well-being. Did you know that only 7 countries currently have a dedicated men's health strategy?
Wow, that's surprisingly low, especially considering how widespread these issues are. Why do you think that is?
It's a good question. I think it reflects this historical neglect of men's health in our healthcare systems. We tend to focus very narrowly on physical health and overlook the critical roles that mental and reproductive health play in men's lives.
Yeah, it's like we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But it feels like maybe we're at a turning point now.
Mm.
With more research coming out and a growing awareness of these issues, it seems like there's a real chance to transform how we understand and address men's health.
I agree. It's definitely an exciting time to be working in this field. As we continue to unravel these complex connections between male fertility, mental health, and sexual function, we can develop more effective treatments and create a more supportive environment for men of all ages.
Yeah, I'm hopeful about that. I think this deep dive has been really insightful. It's shining a light on a topic that is often surrounded by silence and stigma, right? So by talking openly about these issues, hopefully we can encourage more men to, prioritize their well-being and seek help when they need it.
Absolutely. Breaking down those barriers is essential. We need to create a society where men feel empowered to take care of themselves and thrive. Maybe before we wrap up, we should take a moment to summarize what we've learned and think about the broader implications here. What do you think?
That sounds like a good plan. So for our listeners out there, what are some of the key takeaways they should be thinking about?
Okay, so first and foremost, I think it's important to remember that male infertility is not just a reproductive issue. It can be a vital indicator of a man's overall health. We can't view these aspects of a man's life in isolation. They're all interconnected. We need to address them holistically.
Right, it's all connected. And we've also learned that this global concern about declining birth rates is prompting a closer look at the role that men play in all of this.
Right.
It's not just about social factors or women's reproductive health anymore. The focus is expanding to include the often overlooked impact of men's reproductive health and behavior.
Yeah, and let's not forget the intergenerational consequences that we talked about earlier. The potential risks to the mental health of children born to older fathers. It's a reminder that neglecting men's health can have long-term effects that ripple out across generations.
It's like a domino effect, right?
Mm.
And that really makes you think about how those individual choices can have such a profound impact on future generations. So, knowing all of this, what are the next steps? What needs to change to address these challenges effectively?
Well, the researchers in this article, they offer several recommendations. They really urge us to rethink how we approach men's health, both individually and as a society.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Sure. They call for this fundamental shift in healthcare systems, where mental health is integrated into national health strategies designed specifically for men.
So moving away from that kind of fragmented approach to healthcare that we have now towards a more integrated model that acknowledges the connection between mental and physical health.
Exactly. They also highlight the need for more research on the complex interplay of, lifestyle factors, mental health, and reproductive outcomes. They specifically suggest exploring things like early mental health assessments as a preventative measure.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. So intervening early on could potentially help safeguard their reproductive health later in life.
Right. It's about shifting from reacting to problems to proactively preventing them.
I like that. What else do they recommend?
They also emphasize the need for a broader conversation about men's health in our society, challenging those traditional masculinity ideologies that discourage men from seeking help or even talking openly about their health.
Yeah, that's a big one. Stigma and societal expectations can be huge obstacles, for men who are struggling.
You're right. Creating an environment where men feel comfortable discussing their health, both mental and physical, is so crucial. It's about fostering a culture of well-being and empowering men to take an active role in their own health.
It feels like we're at this crossroads,
Hmm.
where scientific discoveries are converging with a growing awareness of the importance of men's health.
I agree. This deep dive into the research on male fertility, mental health, and sexual function has been incredibly illuminating, and it's highlighted this need for like a paradigm shift in how we approach men's health.
Yeah, a total shift. And I'm really hopeful that it will encourage more men to prioritize their well-being.
I share your optimism. The insights that we've gained from this research, they should empower all of us to advocate for a more holistic and inclusive approach to men's health.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's still so much more to explore. And to wrap up this part of our conversation, I want to leave our listeners with this question that was posed by the authors.
Oh, yes. They ask, what are the broader societal implications of these findings?
And how can we support men's health and well-being in a way that acknowledges these interconnections? It's really challenging us to think beyond the individual, and consider that larger context in which men's health is shaped.
It's a call to action for all of us to become advocates for a more holistic and inclusive approach to men's health that recognizes, the interplay of those biological, psychological, and social factors that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's about fostering open dialogue, challenging those harmful stereotypes, and advocating for policies that truly support men's well-being.
Right. It's about creating a future where men feel empowered to take care of themselves and thrive.
So as we kind of start to explore these broader societal implications, I think it's important to remember that, men's health isn't shaped in a vacuum. There are all these other forces at play, like social structures, cultural norms, economic realities. They all factor in.
That's a crucial point. Men's health is really intertwined with those larger societal forces. Think about the influence of traditional masculinity ideologies, those beliefs that pressure men to kind of suppress their vulnerability, avoid seeking help, and reject health-promoting behaviors that are seen as, feminine or whatever.
It's amazing how these societal norms, how powerful they can be in shaping health outcomes. If men are taught that asking for help is a sign of weakness, they're less likely to reach out when they're struggling, regardless of what the issue is. Mental health, reproductive health, anything.
Exactly. It can have such far-reaching consequences. Men might engage in more risky behaviors, delay seeking medical attention, and ultimately, experience poorer health overall.
So how do we even begin to dismantle these harmful stereotypes, right? And create a more supportive environment, it feels like such a huge task,
Yeah.
especially when you consider how deeply entrenched these beliefs are in our culture.
It's definitely complex,
Yeah.
but it's not impossible. I think it requires this multifaceted approach involving education, awareness campaigns, and this conscious effort to challenge those norms at every level. Like, we need to address this in our personal interactions, media portrayals, even in our institutional policies.
So you're talking about a real cultural shift. We need to move toward a more inclusive and understanding definition of masculinity, one that embraces vulnerability, encourages help-seeking, and prioritizes well-being.
Right. We need to redefine what it means to be a man. Redefine it in a way that actually supports men's health and well-being. And that requires a collaborative effort. Individuals, communities, healthcare providers, policymakers, we all need to be involved.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What are some specific steps that can be taken at each of those levels? Like, how can we create a more supportive environment for men, starting at, say, the individual level?
Well, at the individual level, I think it starts with those honest conversations, within families, among friends, encouraging men to open up about their struggles, challenging those dismissive attitudes, just fostering an environment where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
It's about normalizing those conversations about mental health, about reproductive health, about all facets of men's well-being.
Hmm.
These things shouldn't be taboo.
Right.
They're essential parts of a healthy life.
Yeah.
Okay, what about at the community level?
Well, at the community level, I think it's important to involve men in health promoting activities, right?
Yeah.
And build those support networks that offer a sense of belonging, shared experience, things like sports clubs, men's groups, community health initiatives, any space where men can kind of connect and build those supportive relationships.
It's about creating that sense of community around health,
Yeah.
showing men that they don't have to go through these challenges alone.
Hmm.
How about healthcare providers? What can they do?
Well, they can create a more welcoming and inclusive environment, training healthcare professionals to be more sensitive to men's specific needs, addressing those potential biases, and fostering really open communication.
It's about recognizing that men might face unique barriers to accessing healthcare and then adapting, to meet their needs.
Hmm.
And finally, policy changes. What kind of policy changes are needed?
We need to advocate for policies that truly support men's health, increased funding for research, development of those national men's health strategies that we talked about, workplace policies that promote work-life balance and mental health support, educational campaigns that challenge those harmful stereotypes and promote more positive masculinity.
Yeah, it's about creating a societal structure that really prioritizes men's well-being at every level, sending that message that men's health matters.
Exactly. Ultimately, it's about creating a society where men feel empowered to take care of themselves and, have the resources and the support they need to really thrive.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. It really feels like we're at a critical turning point, where scientific progress is aligning with this growing awareness of the importance of men's health.
I agree. It's exciting,
Yeah.
By embracing this opportunity, we can create a future where men's health is no longer hidden.
Yeah.
It's not about silence and stigma anymore. It's recognized as a vital part of individual and societal well-being.
It's definitely a future worth fighting for. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this has sparked some important conversations and inspired you to take action. Remember, we all have a role to play in creating a more supportive and health-promoting world for men. Until next time, take care.